We're going to get started. I'm going to say good evening to everyone and welcome to Let's Talk. We especially want to say welcome to our special guest, Captain Renee Peterson from the Broward Sheriff Office. Welcome. And we're so thankful for to be back on for another discussion regarding how much Black Lives Matter and to continue pushing our voting initiative. We appreciate all of you, and we pray that everyone has met the deadline for voting July 20th. So the question that everybody has is, I am registered to vote. What's next?
Well, as we start that, we want to remind everyone to print sample ballots and research the candidates. That will initiate the start. Also, additional prayer, obviously, for God's Spirit to move in, for guidance with the voting process. And vote in the primary elections, Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. So that's the projected date that we all need to focus on.
Awesome. We heard and he reminded us of three important things that we want to do when we say what's next. We want to print the sample ballot. We want to just have more prayer in our lives. And then we want to make sure that we vote on Tuesday, August the 18th. Thank you so much, Wayne. I am so excited about everything that is going to be coming as we begin to ask questions to our special guests. And again, we want to welcome Captain Renee Peterson. I am especially excited about her because she's a Black woman. Yay, woman power. I love it. And so when I heard that Chef Tony was not going to be able to come, and I was so excited when I learned that she would be a part of our panel tonight. So we want to get started so that we can be sure to at least address the questions that we have for tonight. So Captain Peterson, my first thing that I would like for you to do, as you started earlier, just tell us a little bit about you.
A little bit about me.
Yes.
And I'm going to try to be very brief, but I've been living 43 years, so there's a lot, but I'm going to give you the whole condensed version.
Okay.
I've been in the criminal justice system, approximately 22 years. I have 2 years and 8 months left before I'm qualified to retire. So God willing, I make it there safe. I'm Miami born Jackson Memorial. So my hometown is just to the south of us. My family's from Homestead, South Miami, Perrine area. And the rest are from, as we call it, South Kakalaki, South Carolina. And we some Geechees. But I am a military brat, so I do have kind of a unique story. My dad left to give my mom and my sister and I a better life. And I've had the opportunity to live in many different places, tons of different states, lived abroad in Germany for a few years. And I actually came back to Florida for good about my 11th grade year in high school. So I've been back for some time. And what brought me to Broward County, I started out my career working in the Department of Corrections and working in the criminal justice system, started out at 21. I really enjoyed, as crazy as that sounds, who wants to be locked up in a prison for 8 hours a day plus? Wow. But I look back and that is the gist of my foundation where I'm at right now in law enforcement. So I had the opportunity to work as a officer and a sergeant down at Dade Correctional Institution in Dade County. Came up here with a girlfriend who was going to look for a job, and I ended up getting sucked in, and I came up and I applied and I started working in the Department of Detention with the Sheriff's Office as well. After spending so much time in the criminal justice system, I just felt like there was so much more I could do because I encountered so many people that were incarcerated And I love listening to people's stories and hearing how somebody 14 years old and meeting them at 30 and how getting in the car with the wrong crowd led them to make a bad decision and change the whole trajectory of their life. But not just seeing their crime, seeing how talented they were, and all that talent behind the walls of a jail or a prison made me think, I want to get out there and be on the forefront, because there's a lot of youth that need that intervention. So I became cross certified down in Dade County. My path led me to stay with the Broward Sheriff's Office, and I've worked in many different facets. I worked in Oakland Park during the transition from the PD to the Sheriff's Office. Moved on to the rank of detective in the city of Pompano Beach. I worked property crimes, auto theft, sex offender checks, you name it. From there, I was tasked with working in our gang unit. I worked undercover for many years with gangs and narcotics. I've been detached to Homeland Security, worked cases in the Caribbean, came back, got promoted to the rank of sergeant. And from there, I switched lanes and went from investigations to community services. I worked special events where I got out into the community, which was new territory for me.
Wow.
Yeah, that was different. And I will tell you, that wasn't a path I thought I would take, but now looking back, I see why I did. Somebody called me up and said, you know what? I hear you got a great personality. And I'm thinking, I work undercover. I buy dope and guns and stolen cars. Like, how does this even fit with going out and doing coffee with a cop? And our undersheriff was the one who tapped me. And there was a lot of other people along the way that put me out there who are no longer with the agency. But I had a lot of mentors pushing me in that direction. And it just, I fell in place because I'm back in community in a different way. So from there, I went on to work as the criminal investigations sergeant in the city of Tamarack. And one of my other roles was the neighborhood support team sergeant. And the way I came into a promotion, not conventional, but very, very interesting. I was promoted to the rank of captain by Sheriff Tony back in November. And somebody, the same thing, told him, this young lady is really dialed in and connected, and she has a great relationship with the community. So I, from November to now, have embraced the role as captain of the neighborhood support team. And basically my job is to be out there and engaging the community, not just coffee with a cop, because I think I don't want to make that as it's cliche, but let's be honest, it can be, depending on how you use it. I want to go a little bit deeper, because it's easy to do coffee with a cop and say you interacted with someone from the community. But when you've been in a prison setting, in a jail setting, you see what happens when you don't really go dig in deep and try to pull the community together, because we want to do something for our youth. And at the end of the day, a lot of these issues that quality of life, nuisance, misdemeanors are surrounding our youth. So the neighborhood support team is, and there's a lot of different things that we do in this unit at the sheriff's office. On a personal note, I am a mother to 3 children. I have a 24-year-old son, Corey. He lives in Denver. He was just here 2 weeks ago. And I have 4-year-old twins. So yes, I waited 20 years. I am crazy to have children. So I have two daughters, Noah and Ava, and my son, Corey. And the role of mom is definitely one that I could say has been I probably say the most challenging. People say, how can you go back to work after having twins? And I say, I would rather go toe-to-toe with somebody 6'4" a dude and be with these kids sometimes, because it is challenging being home with kids all day. But I would tell you, being a mother has really helped me in this role as well, because as a mother, especially to a Black male, I've dealt with people throughout my career, and I could see Corey and a lot of these young boys that I deal with. So on another note, I also am an educator. I'm a teacher. I had my son very early. I got pregnant my senior year of high school, and things could have went very differently for me. And again, I had so many people rallying for me, praying for me, and pushing me in the right direction. And despite having that setback, I was able to go to school, obtain a bachelor's degree. And then I wanted to further my education. And this past May, I just earned my master's in public administration from FIU.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I also teach. I currently teach at Broward College at our police academy. That's my part-time job. I teach an area of narcotics, gangs, and extremist groups, international and domestic terrorism. I'm a subject matter expert for FDLE. I help contribute to the manuals that they push out to all the colleges that teach our police cadets throughout the state of Florida. And most recently, now I'll be teaching with FIU. So I have my hands in a lot of pots. I participate in several boards. One that I am very excited about is the YMCA LED Advisory Board. As you may know, the building on Sis Trunk, how historic and groundbreaking it will be, and deal with veterans organizations. And I'm a part of the Fort Lauderdale Women's Council through the chamber. So that's just a little bit about myself. And I could think of a lot more, but I'll spare you.
Oh my God, it's a lot of information, and we're so excited. We're so proud of you. My goodness. And to be 40, what did you say, 43? That's a lot packed into those 43 years. But congratulations and kudos to you for that, for wanting and desiring to do more, especially in your community. And so my next question was going to be why DSO, but I think you kind of expressed to us why DSO. The next question I have is, as you see it through your eyes, what is the relationship with the communities of color and the Broward Sheriff Department? It's one thing to have you in the department, and your vision is big, and you're trying to help so many people. And I like the word you used before, youth. I think that's very important, because that's what we're all about. So through your eyes, what do you think? What is the relationship? Can it be better? What can we do differently as it relates to the communities of color?
So where we are right now, I would say, and keep in mind, I'm thinking I've been here with this particular agency 17 years plus. So looking back and then where we are now, I think we've grown a lot as far as building relationships with the community. Could we do better? Absolutely. I can tell you, I meet people on a regular basis where I stop my truck, I get out and I walk, and they're looking like, what is wrong with this lady? And why is she walking by herself? And people will come and, I just talk to people. I walk through duplexes, and people will share with me incidents that they've had or encounters that they've dealt with deputies. And it probably wasn't the best encounter. Rather, it was attitude, being talked down to. And that, we're at a place where, especially with everything going on, let's be honest, dealing with law enforcement for some people have not been the best experiences, depending on what community you live in. So can we fairly equate Weston and Parkland residents with Collier City or Franklin Park residents, So there is a difference. And I will say this, and again, I can speak for me, but I will also tell you that I work with people. I've worked in Oakland Park, Pompano. I've been in West Park. I've been with coworkers, and we stop. We might go to the corner store. We might go over here at a barbecue stand, and we engage people. This is happening on a regular basis. It's not the stuff that's highlighted, and I totally get it. In Pompano, we have what's Area 2. It's west of the tracks, Collier City. There was a deputy, his name was Freiberger, older white gentleman. Area 2 was his home. They loved him out there. That relationship, when I first came to Pompano as a detective, was like strange, because I'm thinking, our community, our people, they embrace him so well. He did the work that it took to get in that community and gain respect. And when things happen in that community, they weren't calling the black deputies. They call him Firebird, because they say he zipped all around the neighborhood. But Freiberger, he was one of these people. Hey, we had a homicide. They would call him. He says, give me a few minutes. He'd go to the community. He built a trust with them, and they respected him. They fed him out of their house. That's relationship building, and that transcends race, right? So I would say that these stories, there's fireburgers everywhere in the agency. There's also bad actors in the agencies. I've dealt with bad actors. I'll tell you, I was going on the scene of a search warrant years ago. And I was working in our strategic investigation division as a gang detective, and I was in plain clothes in an unmarked car. And I was behind two federal agents who were working the case with me. And usually when we do a search warrant, we block off the streets. So when you go up, once SWAT goes and breaches the home, all the investigators who work the case can come in now. So I followed these two agents in, and I was behind them. They got to the checkpoint where the deputy was, and the deputy saw them, and he let them through. I was following them through, and this deputy ran up to my truck and was banging on, "Dad, we tell you the street was closed," and da-da-da. And I'm looking at him, and I'm letting him go carry on, because in that moment, what he saw was just a Black female. He assumed I lived in the neighborhood. He assumed that I was being disrespectful, driving right past him to go inside the scene. And, you know, when he finally found out who I was, I remember saying, first of all, why are you banging on my window? And when I let the window down and he saw my badge, he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." He was very apologetic. But when those incidents happen, it makes me wonder, what about people who don't have that privilege to, you know, have that badge? And would he have behaved differently if I was just a resident? And if I was going past the checkpoint, which is totally wrong, is there a better way to handle that? And the answer is yes. And this is how we build relationships, is those small encounters, you know? So it's easy for an agency to have a unit of people like me, but we can't be everywhere. And the people who are making the encounters are people who are responding to 911 calls, people who are maintaining perimeters at crime scenes. All those little interactions matter. So I would say we have contact with the community on a regular basis. And I can guarantee you, for all the times we get it wrong, there are so many people that are out there getting it right. But one of the main goals of my unit, the neighborhood support team, is to make sure that my way, my goals, the agency's vision, the way Renee gets out there, we want to make little clones, and not just like me, but for good-hearted people, and to teach them why this is so important to be out there and be a part of the fabric of the community and build relationships. So we are working to get there. And I don't think there's an agency that has perfected it. Believe me, I've been researching, but there are some that are out there leading the way with best practices. I hope that
answers the question. Awesome. Panelists, do you have any feedback or anything you want to say to that question? Are you good? Okay, good. Okay, so the next question is this. Studies support the importance that communities of color have law enforcement officers that reflect the community. Broward Sheriff deputies are at about 13%. Do the department think it is important to improve these numbers? And if so, how?
I'm glad you asked that, because our numbers, 13%, that's an old number. And when you talk about deputy sheriffs or sworn law enforcement, you're talking not the jail facilities, not our detention. You're talking who are out there enforcing the law, correct?
That is correct.
I want to give you the updated numbers, because I actually, every Monday, HR releases these numbers and provides them to the sheriff. He is hands-on and wants to see these numbers. So I was able to request them since it's Monday. They sent them out 7:35, and the answers came before your question did. So
okay, awesome.
The percentage of Black deputies right now currently working, 17.41%. Hispanic deputies is 26.27%. White deputies is 53.05%. And other is 4%. So that's a total of 1,557 sworn law enforcement deputies. So 17% is a whole lot better from when I started. And 13% is an old number. And that spike has a lot to do with recent hires. Most recently, there was a lot of deputies that were in the jail that were in a holding pattern. They were either cross-certified or trying to get into the police academy. I can tell you, going back to 2002 when I was hired, working in the jail, we had a hard time getting out of the jail and onto the road, which made no sense to us. Majority of the deputies in the jail, the numbers are different. It's majority Black deputies that work in the jail, right? So we couldn't understand why we're good enough to work in the jail. I've been here a few years. Your verbal skills are excellent because you have no gun. You just got your mouth, right? So Ken Jenny was the sheriff at the time, and I was denied coming to the road. Miramar Police was going to hire me. And I'm telling you, it's a God thing. I became deputy of the month, had a breakfast with him. He asked me some questions, and I'm thinking I'm going to Miramar. I'm not going to lie. I told him exactly how I felt. And he said, you know, it was when I was younger, I had speeding tickets, and it was nothing that should have disqualified me. They were hiring people who never even worked for the agency, and I had been proven in our jail system. Wow. He made a decision, and here I am today. And this is why having someone who can look a little deeper and not discount you, you could be missing out on an excellent employee. So I can tell you right now that recently happened. We had 250 people in our jail that was in a holding pattern, and they reviewed their files and realized there's no reason they shouldn't be out here. And I know they processed a lot of those deputies, so that number has jumped 17%.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Panelists, any questions?
Yeah, I wanna take responsibility for that question. When I was doing some research, and I couldn't find the current numbers, so I guesstimated that they probably wouldn't be just that much more significant more. I just want to share. Thank you for coming on. Number one. I live in West Palm Beach. I have not been stopped by the police almost 15 years. Ironically enough, I was coming from a praise team practice on last Thursday, and I was stopped by the police for running a light. I drive like an old man. So the light was turning yellow, and I took the light. Anyway, it was 2 Black females that stopped me. And I actually just wrote an email to their chief of police. It was the most professional stop I've ever had. Number one, the first thing was I felt safe. And she explained to me what happened. She told me that at that light that folks had been killed within the last 2 years, that's the percentage. And just explained to me why. She let me off with a warning, is what she did. And I felt very comfortable. And what I said in my email, and I'm saying to you, I just think it's very important. I heard what you said about the white gentleman, the white sheriff that did a really good job, and his section or what have you. But I do believe it's very important to have people that look like us in our community, because I felt like on that night, she didn't see a presumed criminal. She saw her brother, her cousin. She saw the pastor at a church. She saw a teacher, whatever the case may be. And that's why I think she dealt with me that way. I've had run-in with law enforcement, just being stopped, that was very aggressive. I felt unsafe. And so I guess my point more so than the question is just affirming to me the importance of having individuals that look like us. And when they see you, young girls see you, it gives them something to aspire to, especially hearing your story from high school to where you are now. So I just want to just affirm you in all that you're doing.
Thank you very much. And I will say, I'm glad you had a positive experience. I moved to Coral Springs 4 years ago, and I was learning my way through the neighborhood, and I guess I was going 35 and a 25. I had no way of knowing. And one of these motor cops jumped out, how they just jump in front of your car. And my twins were only a couple months old at the time, you figure. And he was very rude. When I say, I had a young lady in the car from church. She was helping me with my twins when they were really little. And we were going to get food. And the way he spoke to me, I had to remember, I have a young lady that I'm setting the example for, because I talk to kids all the time about when you have these encounters and they don't behave a certain way, in a professional way, how do you behave? And I have my twins in the back who are little, and he let me off without the ticket. But you can also walk away, and for people who don't have any power, take their dignity in an encounter like that. Because, listen, I grew up in a household, you're not going to talk to me in any kind of way. You don't look like you carried me for 9 months in your stomach, and that's not happening. But when you're dealing with authority figures, you have to fall back and just process where you are and where do I go from here. And in that moment, with all the things that I've told you guys I've accomplished, working with Homeland Security, going to the Caribbean, kilos, you name it, to still be treated like that. And I didn't need that incident to tell me that it doesn't matter what you've done, how accomplished you are still Black to some people. I could say that to that guy, and it was a white male, could be that he was just not a decent person. And I'm glad that I have the insight of law enforcement, because I've worked with some people, and if somebody encountered certain individuals who are white males, they would leave that encounter saying he's racist. Me knowing that person and working a shift with him, I could tell you he's just a jerk. He's an equal opportunity, person who doesn't treat people well. So I totally understand what you're saying. I do think we do, of course we benefit from seeing people who look like us. I think we benefit in many ways. The fear factor. I've worked with deputies who come from the Midwest, and they've probably seen 2 Black people in the town they grew up in. And imagine coming here and being assigned to Pompano in a predominantly Black neighborhood and getting out at a party with cars everywhere, and they say, make these people leave. First of all, they hearts like this. They ain't never been around so many Black folks in their life. Not that they're bad people. I can get out of my car and say, hey, and start talking to people and walk through, and they're standing at the car frozen. Like, come on, that's not their comfort zone. So I also think when you are comfortable in certain settings, right, the same way they could go to an all-white bar where they see a Confederate flag, I might take a pause. They might walk up in that joint and be very comfortable where I am not. I do think there are benefits to having people serve in a community. You need diversity. I don't think it is right to have, let's say, an all-white group of people working in a predominantly Black area. I think you need diversity. I would not say that you cannot have a white person working in that area, because now we're reversing it. I know some deputies who are white that they want to be in the community. They got really good hearts. They're doing more in our backyard than Black deputies that's been assigned to the area, right? Mm-hmm. So when you experience a situation where I've had somebody see me as a detective and call my boss and says that they don't want a Black detective. They don't want a Black detective. Think about that, right? And this is why I tell people, when we have this ask about people who look like us, it's very legitimate, but how far do we go with it? And my sergeant at the time, who was a Jewish white male, he's like, oh, you don't want a Black female detective. Okay. There was only one other Black person in our unit who was a male. He said, I'm going to send him. And the message he sent to that woman was, you don't get to pick. These are my employees, and this is who shows up. So, yes, I acknowledge what you're saying. It is very important. And I also say, let's take it a step further. I've, as a sergeant, gotten complaints on Black deputies who have talked to people in the community horribly. No people skills. And have the complaint and tell me a Hispanic deputy showed up and diffused it and was so nice. Think about that. I think we need to get the right people in the community, the right people, and it should reflect the diversity of the community.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll chip for just a moment.
Sure.
Okay, how you doing? Good night. So I've had some very good run-ins with officers, and I've had some very bad run-ins with officers in my past. I've worked like a little bit in law enforcement. I did work for the state attorney's office for a little bit of time, and I got the opportunity to work with the city of North Miami Beach. I had a little bit of experience with law enforcement there. But I think, and this is just as kind of an open suggestion as someone who's seeing, currently I'm an educator, I've been an educator for about 15 years. When we look at officers, and I'm not just talking about African-American people, just people in general, when I look at officers, I understand that each officer is an individual person. I do understand that comes with their individual mindset and whatever has happened to them, even that day can affect how they interact with people. And I think that everyone is pretty much the same way, even inside and outside of law enforcement. I'm looking at officers though, and I know that the officers in our communities are supposed to be civil servants. And I think that one of the issues that the people in the community find is that we don't feel like we're always being served by officers. Sometimes the perspective of an officer is very negative. Usually the connotation is very negative. If I'm driving my car and I see an officer pull up behind me, they may just be going home. They have nothing to do with me, but my heart starts beating because I'm wondering, whether I did something wrong or not. It just comes based upon some of my run-ins with officers for things that I haven't done, and sometimes things that I have done. I wonder if there is a system, whereas each officer is a person and an individual, definitely. I wonder if there's a system of merit where officers can be rated per interaction. For instance, the gentleman just said that he had a good experience with 2 female officers, and he wrote in an email. I wonder how the interaction would change if every time an officer came into contact with a civilian, they had the opportunity, almost a requirement, to tell how that experience went. They got a ticket, whether they were let off, whether they were taken to jail. I wonder how that would change the equation if officers had the ability to kind of hear from the civil, from us, the people in the community, in terms of how the interaction went. I wonder if that would change anything. And that's just an open suggestion to you, and just wondering what you think about that.
So thank you for the question. And man, you said I think I've had a lot of negative interaction with law enforcement. I thought I looked like a nice girl, and I'm glad that you guys have had mixed interaction. But I can tell you, just hearing what you're saying, I know what you mean. It's kind of like, I don't know, Yelp, or even with, you're an educator. You can rate your professors or teachers now, right? People can write about them. The reality is, and I always go back to Pompano Beach, because Pompano Beach is one of our largest districts. It's a huge city, and it makes up 1/3 of the crime in Broward County. So let's take, for instance, calls for service. There, by the end of the month, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls for service. And you are going from call to call to call to call. I was a sergeant on the shift. My shift was 4:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. There were days we did not eat. They're holding reports to the next shift. And I mean, in between calls, you're on your laptop in your car and something goes out, shots fired, or something happens, a burglary. I can tell you that a lot of what you're saying, we document via our personnel file. So let's say how you wrote that letter, right? The accommodation letter. That goes directly into an employee's file. That goes into play when we're considering people for leadership roles, or we're considering them for different things in the community. Is this person a good fit? We also document excessive use of force, and I know you'll get into that later, but it is very important to track and document complaints. And if a complaint is not fair and valid, does that go in a file? Should it still count against you? No, some people complain just because they don't like that they got a ticket. You could have been nice. We have a body camera now. We go back and look. The person was courteous. The person was just upset they got a ticket. And then later they say, I was upset. So we got to be very careful how we document this stuff too, because you have people who are on the job and they're doing the right thing, and people could use a system like that to hurt them. But when it comes to accommodation letters and things of that sort, we absolutely, that goes into your personnel file in the city as well as our headquarters. And when it comes to documenting complaints that are investigated thoroughly, you can absolutely see these complaints. I've been on trial and in a high profile case, and they dig up everything on you as a law enforcement officer because they want to know who is speaking to the jury. And a complaint was brought up that I had. It was an excessive use of force complaint. And I'm thinking, wow, where did that come from? It was totally unfounded, unjustified. It was a guy who escaped, and I took him in custody, and he was fighting. He resisted, and it was completely investigated. The only complaint I ever got in my whole entire career. Imagine somebody complained because I didn't let them escape. But at the end of the day, that was brought up in trial to discredit me. Now, I say this, I was completely open. Let's talk about it. The judge wanted to know the outcome of the complaint. When they sidebar and said it was, it was non-sustained and she was, right in the use of force. That's a particular situation where people can know Renee had a complaint, but this was the outcome. So we do have systems like that. And I would say you want to know if the deputy can catalog how that interaction went. We have a CAD system. Every call that they go to, it's something that our dispatchers keep. And do we put the outcome of that complaint or outcome of that interaction? We write a little entry, met with the subject, met with the victim, problem resolved or what have you, and we move on to the next call. But I do hear you, and right now we're working on a system where we can make contact with people and give them that extra customer service to see not only did you have an issue, but how was it handled? I call it the Chick-fil-A of community policing, that extra customer service. So we are working on a model like that. And some of the pushback that I'm getting is, Renee, you don't even know what you're taking on. You are creating so much work. And I said, we don't know that until we do it. And if it doesn't work, we figure out a different way to do it. I hope that answers your question.
Good stuff. Wow. That's awesome. And thank you all. If there's nothing else, is there something else before we go to the next question? If not, here's the next question. As an officer, Black female officer, what is your view of treatment of Black men and women when called to encounter an issue that begins as a non-violent issue?
I've been on many calls in my career, and I can absolutely tell you it depends on who shows up, right? Mm-hmm. We all have those relatives too that'll come to a family function, and as my granddaddy said, they can mess up a junkyard. We have those people in law enforcement too, right? And we all joke saying that certain people come as our backup. You look back and see who it is and you kind of roll in your eyes. And then you see those other people and you're like, thank goodness it's that person. I go back to what a person's, background matters so much. Where did you grow up? Do you know how to talk to people? How old are you? When you got a 21-year-old coming on a scene with two grown people in their 40s having a domestic, and you got somebody who younger than they kids telling them what they need to do, you better be very careful, first of all, stepping in someone's house and telling them what they need to do. I will say, just speaking from what I've seen, we've gotten it right and we've gotten it wrong. There have been many times, and you mentioned being a mom. This was my survival skills in the prison setting, because I learned early on, we don't run the prison. We run the prison with the cooperation of the inmates. And if I'm on a compound with 1,000 inmates and me and somebody else, we ain't running nothing. We just hoping that they stay peaceful. And one of the things that protected me in that setting was to be relatable, seeing people, them seeing me as their mom, their sister, their auntie. Even some of the most aggressive situations, you come on scene and you talk to people, just really talk to them and try to de-escalate. And you know that when you come on scene with that mindset, they're yelling, they're screaming, okay, it's a problem. They call 911. People don't call 911 when things are going well. You take the emotion out of it and say, I'm here to do my job. How can I improve this situation? And I think sometimes it's not always bias. It's just experience It's not having the ability to come on a scene and be in that space and say, I need to make it better, and not that I need to control this right here and right now. Because when people have lost their temper and 911's call and it's a fight or what have you, and it's not physical yet, you have the ability to take that thing here or take it down here. So yes, absolutely, I've seen it. And I'm absolutely so happy I could tell you story after story of coming on a scene and seeing things heating up. And then I step in the middle of the situation and I'm like, what's the matter? Why are you yelling at us? We didn't do nothing. We're here to help you. You don't understand, miss. And I once they get it out, because people want to be heard. And when you tell them, shut up, lower your voice. Didn't I tell you, sit down? You've already lost them. You are now being adversarial on a scene where there's tension. So one of the things that we are teaching, because we realize when you come from a police academy setting where they're teaching kids to be authoritative, and mind you, some of these kids are coming out of college settings or coming from backgrounds, they've never even been in a fight a day in their life. So they have to use those verbal skills, and they think by selling these wolf tickets, yelling at people is going to make people comply, and you're inflaming the situation. That's why you need a mixture of experience on a shift. Let's think about that. You have all young people on a shift, the young leading the young. I've seen older people come on scene, and even me as a person in my 20s, standing around a crowd of guys on the scene. I had a senior older white guy who was a cop in New York, and he pulled me back and he said, you need to be aware of your surroundings. We ended up finding a gun on one of the guys. I was completely so comfortable because I'm with my people. This guy got a gun. So I think experience, age, time on the job, and training are things that can help that. Because I can tell you, and being completely honest, who I was in my 20s and who I am now, I have evolved. You will evolve because you start to understand what is it I'm trying to accomplish. And when you're young and you're new and you're all gun-ho, your mindset is different. And that's where we rely on our elders in the business to help reel us back and show us how it's done.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Any feedback from our panelists?
No, I just want to say I'm fascinated by all the information that you're sharing with us, Captain, and I appreciate it, because it's one thing to see it from one side and to understand from your perspective of what you've been going through, to hear it. Sometimes it makes it a little bit more digestible because of that, because we're at this point of our lives of what's happening now, we're so on point that we're putting each other on point, and I understand your position as far as, the helm that you have with dealing with, like I said, cadets or new people coming in. Some people may be reluctant to continue their career as a police officer because of what's happening. But then you have those with tenure that has like, all right, we're going to go through this, we're going to get through this. Let me give you or share some advice. But like you were saying before, it's a lot, when you have officers that are involved in communities, it kind of helps the community help the officer do their job when it comes to situations like that. And I think we've lost that type of encounter, like, dealing with officers, because sometimes I see some of these officers in my neighborhood. I live in Homestead now. So I wave hi just as a courtesy, to let you know I see you. And if you wave back or whatever, that's fine. But I know that you see me too, but it's something that we should still just do out of, respect and, just doing stuff like that. That'll somehow on this tension that we're having right now against officers per se, because all we see is when we say an officer, a police officer at this point, we just think of a white police officer. We don't see female, we don't see mom, we don't see any other culture or race other than a white officer. So then to hear what you're going, what you've gone through or the different levels of things you're going through now kind of helps me as a person understand a lot more. And like I said, digest it a little bit better. So thank you.
And if I may just add two cents to that, Captain Peterson, I truly appreciate your transparency and to show how you have evolved. I think you leverage or spoke about that Chick-fil-A effect, right? And that customer service experience. And and how that evolves. You don't start there, right? And so when you look at officers, looking at them individually, and understanding they are part or represent the collective, but they may just be, have a bad day or just not good people based upon like going from case to case to case to case to case to case. They may be just exhausted. But that community relation is invaluable. I've worked with countless officers, the police chief in Delray, on many community initiatives, and it's something valuable when you're working with the community day in and day out. It as you talked about the deputy that is in Pompano that they used to just call, right? Like crime comes down, right? Like, when community engagement goes up, crime comes down because there's that transparency, and you can talk, you can share tips. You don't look at officers as adversarial. So again, I wanted to affirm you like so many of us have on this call, because this is huge. This education helps us to see that perspective, to see that other side. And when we're educated, we can too evolve and help others as well. So again, Captain, I thank you very much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And Captain, we have a voting initiative that we started because we felt that our youth and young adults needed to know how important it was to vote. We felt that voting is a part of allowing our voices to be heard. And so we were pushing the deadline for voting. And now that, to register to vote rather, and now that we've done that, we're on our next phase, and that is, I am registered to vote. What's next?
Right. And I just want to go ahead.
No. Go ahead, sir. And I guess, Vivian, you wanted me to speak to that.
Right. But after Wayne, go ahead, Wayne.
No, we've been pushing this initiative based on, and unfortunately, because of the incidents that happened in the past, we are now trying to get more people involved, or now youngsters that are registered to vote. So we want you to get involved, and to print that sample ballot. That's how you're going to really find out what you're voting for. Just don't assume once you go in that voting booth, everything is going to be laid out. People are passing out stuff. You can get your stuff online and newspapers if you still read a paper, but there's ways to get the information that you need. So print a sample ballot. That way you're rehearsing or reviewing what you need to vote on. And of course, we all need prayer. So prayer over everything that you're voting on, or everything that's happening in this world right now, will get you past, these times. And that's very, very important. And then to remind everybody that the voting date is August 18th, this month. So this is the month to go out and vote and to put people in office that can help our community in the future. So,
right.
Thank you for that. And I thank all of you for doing this work, because this is work, and we just lost a giant. Mr. Lewis.
Yep.
And there are so many people. I was in DC in October when we just lost Elijah Cummings. And I remember that week there in that city, everything kind of shut down. And I remember thinking most recently, I'm 43. And I think everybody remembers, you start getting to an age where you start seeing really great icons starting to leave us, and thinking about their legacy because it's being flashed and posted all over the TV. And prior to that, I understood the importance of voting. Going back to high school, I was on our debate team. I understood research, the value of having facts, and being able to make educated decisions, and how important it is. And later, I really understood in my 30s, believe it or not, because everything was a presidential election, right? And that the Black vote, we weren't coming out as much for local. politics, local government elections. And people don't even understand how important that is to vote for people in your own backyard. People, you ask most people, and I go vote for county commission, no one's there. And I can't understand it. I personally can't understand it because we have so many that have come before us and the things that they did to just have the right to vote. My grandfather is from South Carolina, as I said, and way out in the country. And him and my grandmother would tell me stories of things they had to do just to go to school when they weren't picking tobacco and being spit at and called racial slurs. And my grandfather is 94. He loves to go vote. And the fact that a 94-year-old man can get up and go vote, and I talk to people who say my vote don't count, oh, this and that, but they'll line up to buy a pair of tennis shoes. I have not really made the connection because it's not been my priority, as I know there are people out there on the forefront studying why people don't vote. I just don't understand. But what I have done as private citizen Renee Peterson is to encourage young people when I talk to them. I recently spoke to a group in Fort Lauderdale, and it was talking about recent protests. How can we heal? And one of the things that I told them, okay, once we're done marching, once we're done protesting, protest is a great thing. It has moved the dial in this country on a lot of issues. But we need to strategize and put things into action. And the people who you send to DC, the people who you elect locally to represent you, you better make sure those people represent your interests. It's easy to have a palm card and write down the middle who you voted for. But I want to take it a step further. When people know the candidates, when they get engaged with them, they hear their stories, that gives you a drive to show up and support them and vote for them. And I think we need, in an age of Zoom, now we have more storytelling where people don't have to go to venues, but we need more people to tell the why. Why do you want me to vote for you? I don't need you to show up and take a picture and show that you did something and you helped build a house and post it on Facebook and then you left 30 minutes after the event started. I think a lot of us are tired of that nonsense. I'm about the doing. What are you doing for us? And how do we motivate our young people? And I say we have to teach young people to be civically involved and minded and know how our government works. We have people complaining to us about issues, and I listen, but I always tell people, listen, I'm not running for office, so I'm gonna be real honest with you. You want me to tell you something that's gonna make you feel warm and fuzzy, or the truth? And most people want the truth when you get down to it. The bottom line is some of the issues that they're placing on law enforcement shouldn't even be at our feet. You got politicians out here marching with you, and that was their job to fix that situation that you're marching on. But they out here with you. So just knowing where things fall and how they affect us, how do we motivate people who are not interested in voting? That is something that's always piqued my interest now because I understand the importance. And again, from what I do outside of law enforcement, any platform that I get to hold space and talk to young people, because people like my grandfather, my mother, me, we know, all of us on this call know, it's the younger ones who are so far removed from a lot of the civil unrest and the civil rights movement and from Jim Crow and things that prevented people in our past from voting. And we don't got to look back too far, some of our relatives. And my fear is as those things die out and history's not taught, if people think it's somebody else's job and they don't see firsthand the sacrifices that those before us made, it's not going to be a priority. And I think history is the one way when you remind people of what happened to our people on this soil and what they did for us, that's a reminder that's going to shock the conscience of some of these young people. And now they'll feel it's a duty for those who are no longer here that I must, not it's optional, I must get out and vote.
Good stuff. Powerful stuff.
If I can add, Captain Peterson, next time you're at church to preach, let me know. I want to come because you were preaching. In fact, if we were at church, I'll be behind you, tapping on your shoulder. But as a 13-year educator, and I teach English and language arts. This is something that I have been passionate about. I feel, and I won't rehash what you said, but you hit it right on the head, that our age and older, we know about voting, but our teenagers are so detached from policy. My youngest son is 18, and we were having a discussion about who to vote for. And I was trying to explain to him, your parents aren't rich. So when you go to college, you're going to need financial aid. So you need to vote for a candidate that's going to have a secure focus on education. And I had to kind of walk through that process. So I agree with you. I think when it comes to this whole voting thing, and I always say those who are suppressing voting, there's a reason they're doing it, because they understand the importance of voting. And guess what? They're telling their kids about the importance of voting. And the last thing I'll say is that when you are an informed voter, and I think this is why we're in the situation that we now are as a country, there's a whole bunch of non-informed voters, because when you're informed, you know who not to vote for. And you understand the importance of, in terms of when it's time to vote, I may not really like this person, but when I have to compare the two, let me go ahead and vote for this person, because at some level, they're going to deal with my issues and my concerns, versus where we call the cancel culture. Well, they're not really, doing what I want them to do per se, so I'm just not going to vote. And we know that a non-vote is a vote. So you're 100% right about history and understanding the importance of who you're voting for as relates to policy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Peterson, our time is expiring, and we are just so elated that you were able to come on with us. You've shared so much information with us, and I agree with Michael that sometimes when you don't know, or maybe Wayne said this, I'm not sure, when you don't know, you just form an opinion, and it's not always the right information, just form an opinion. We like to hear it from the horse's mouth. And we realize that you have been around and you've been involved with a lot, and we so much appreciate who you are. And we know you got a little God in you, because you just talk about the prayers in the church and you preaching to us. And so we know where you are with that. So we appreciate that as well. But we just want to say thank you. And we would love to have you back later on as things, and if time allows, because we know you are a busy person. So again, on behalf of the team and I, we just want to say thank you for being a part of this Zoom and our Let's Talk Black Lives Matter. If there's anything else from the panel before we go ahead and close, and if not, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you all for inviting me into the space. I'm busy, but not too busy to talk about these issues. I thank you all for doing the work that you all are doing. Even though I work and I'm balancing having another job and kids and all this other stuff, this is the important stuff. And a lot of people out there that are doing it aren't getting paid to do it. They're doing it because it's a passion and they know the need for it. And even people like myself always feel there's an organization out there doing that, and right. Who's the organization? Well, you're the organization. You're one of many. And I think your wealth of knowledge and your passion for getting out there and advocating for people in the community and asking these questions, I wish it was so many more of you. So I would just say, hold us accountable, hold all of us accountable, because I know if something happened to my Black son, my daughters, you guys would tear the doors off the institution for answers and holding us accountable. And that's why these forums and people like yourselves are important. So I retire in a few years, 2 years, 8 months, not that I'm counting. And beyond me, I'm going to be gone. When you guys move on, train others to do exactly what you're doing, because somebody has to carry the torch. So thank you.
And we're going to definitely be calling upon you. We hope that this is a lasting partnership, and that we'll be calling on you because we believe in community outreach and involvement as well. That's part of what we do. And so we'll definitely be calling upon you to help us out, assist us, direct us, kind of give us some resources, et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't do this in the beginning, but we are about prayer. We definitely believe in the power of prayer. So we're going to ask Elder Ricardo to close us out with prayer. And again, we just want to say thank you for the time that you spent with us tonight.
You're welcome.
Let us pray. Wonderful Lord and Savior, we're so thankful and honored to be able to bid your business. Dear Lord, we know that the times that we're in are difficult times, but we know with you that you will guide and lead and protect us. Thank you so much for the counsel and the direction that Captain Peterson gave us tonight. We just pray that you will keep her safe as she continues on with her occupation, dear Lord. We know how dangerous that it can be. So please put a hedge of protection around her. We just continue to pray for our leadership. God, we thank you so much for Sister Brian as she leads the South Florida Adventist Youth Federation. We know the thousands of youth and young adults that will tune in and want to be informed about voting. So, dear Lord, we just want to impress upon the hearts of our youth and young adults the importance of voting and help them to understand the sacrifice that was made by those giants that came before us. Again, dear Lord, we just pray that you would take us from this place, but never from your presence. These and many blessings we ask in your Son's precious name for his sake. Amen.
Amen. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.